extra drums off the top of our show there. I liked it. Oh, this is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts Emily Campagno and Kaylee McEnany. Joining us today, Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall is here, and Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. It's going to be rockin' hour. Okay, let's start with this. The House just passed a controversial new bill on a party line vote which could fundamentally reshape the way public institutions deal with transgender athletes in sports. The Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act aims to amend Title IX's definition of gender, making the criteria based solely on a person's biological sex at the time of birth. That new definition would effectively bar transgender women from competing in women's sports, in particular in public schools and universities across America. And while the bill's passage marks a big win for Republicans and female athletes, the White House says it will be dead on arrival. If it hits the president's desk, he'll veto it. Here's a quote. At a time when transgender youth already face a nationwide mental health crisis, a national law that further stigmatizes these children is completely unnecessary, hurts families and students, and would only put students at greater risk. The president actually were presented with H.R. 734. He would veto it, as I mentioned. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy speaking on the bill's passage on the Capitol Hill steps just a moment ago.
But there's a reason why Title IX was created. There's a reason why there's men and women's sports. There's a reason why there's a professional basketball for men and women. It's about fairness. And if there's one final fiber of America, it's about giving people an opportunity.
And again, that was moments ago. And we just had on in focus former NCAA swimming superstar Riley Gaines, recalling her time swimming against transgender competitor Leah Thomas. Watch this. In 2018-2019, born William Thomas, Leah Catherine had a season in which Leah Thomas competed on the men's team.
Yep.
That's where Leah Thomas was. Ranked 554th in the 200 freestyle. 65th in that 500 freestyle. So not competitive in the men's races at all. Switch over to the women's, and it was a completely different story that you just heard Riley Gaines talking. So, Leslie, on the left, to tinker with Title IX in a way that honestly wipes away women in this sense, to erase women. That's what people on the left are talking about. And I don't understand why there can't be separate but equal for transgender. If they were real, actual women, we wouldn't call them transgender women. So, and by the way, if you or I decided we want to go in the other direction, if you take testosterone and try to compete in NCAA sports, you can't do that. That's not allowed, because that's considered to help us in our recovery. So we're not allowed to do that. So it is not an even playing field. How do we approach it?
I have to tell you, this is an area where I am torn. I'll be very honest, because I can see both sides, and it sounds like I'm on the fence and I have one foot in each side. I'm a mother of 2 teenagers. My daughter does track. She does high jump. She's going to be mad I mentioned it on television. But
and she's very talented, so be proud.
I am proud of her. I don't know how I would feel if there were a biological boy who was trans who was competing in that. I'm being very honest. But at the same time, I'm uncomfortable with the discriminatory aspect of it. Because I feel like, you know, whether it's a state like Florida, don't say gay, or other places in this country
that was never
where there's so much legislation going on, it seems attacking trans youth. And living in Southern California,
so
we
wait,
have a sizable trans
let me pause. How does this attack trans youth? Because when Riley Gaines talked about male genitalia just hanging out in the middle of a women's locker room, how is that attacking? How is that attacking trans youth? I really want to try to understand, because if your daughter were put in that position, what would you tell her?
Well, I'd have to be put in that position. I don't know. That's why I said I'm torn.
Potentially could be coming if your child is, you know, under the age of 18.
Right. But to answer your question, the reason that I feel it's discriminatory is because I think we would all agree here, whether we're Democrats or Republicans, independents or pieces of each. This is not the most pressing issue in our nation. This is not an issue that affects most of us in our
You don't get to punt and dodge because you have a
I agree with you. Government shouldn't be involved, but Joe Biden changed the statute to protect women athletes.
Exactly. But I don't, and here's the other thing, I don't feel that government should be involved. I don't think it should be federal. I don't think it should be state. I do think it should be the individual sports organizations that make these decisions.
There you go.
Okay, and I do feel that, but I am torn between, I feel the attacks, if you will, on trans, and then on the other side as a parent of a female athlete.
All right.
Pramila Jayapal, the progressive congresswoman from Washington State, is drawing criticism for comments she made about immigrants that seem to sound like stereotyping. Here's what she said on the House floor so you can judge for yourself.
This country needs immigrants to survive. Immigrants pick the food we eat, rebuild our communities after climate disasters, help construct our infrastructure, power our small business economy, clean our homes, and look after the most precious in our families, our children and our elders.
Yeah, and speaking of coming across the southern border, Leslie, former Texas Republican Rep. Mayra Flores, she was responding to this, and she said this is the same casual, condescending racism from the left that I experienced when I was elected as the first Mexican-born congresswoman. She said they see immigrants as laborers who should focus only on making life easier for the liberal elite rather than people who respect the law and want to live the American dream like the immigrants in my family, my dad and grandparents and Raymond's and the like.
Yep.
Immigrant child as well.
Yeah.
We all are at one point, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Look, I didn't like what she said, but the reality is, and I live in Southern California, we have the largest amount of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, not just in our state, but in Southern California. And the numbers are there, and both Democrats and Republicans have undocumented laborers cutting their grass, taking care of their children, cleaning their homes, working in the agricultural belt in California. And the reason is these are areas that are not regulated. These are areas where people are underpaid. These are areas where people don't want the jobs. And an example of that is in the agricultural belt of California, there are employers who said, we need laborers, we need laborers. And the only people that showed up were the undocumented people because they wanted the work and they wanted to do the work. I don't think saying the stereotype is right. I do think she should have been specific with those areas of labor that there were so many undocumented immigrants, undocumented migrants doing that work and willing to do that work. But all of us are immigrants, and every job you have, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or you are working in the agricultural industry picking our lettuce, all of these people are immigrants. Some came through the front door, some through the back.
President Biden is set to meet with the infamous Tennessee Three next week. They're the state lawmakers who faced expulsion for participating in gun control protests in the wake of the tragic shooting at Nashville Christian School. However, the president has yet to extend an invitation to a single one of the victims' families of those lost in the Covenant School shooting. It's shocking. Nor has he invited Nashville officers Michael Colazzo and Rex Engelbert, whose heroic actions stopped the shooter from claiming more innocent lives. Fox's Peter Ducey pressed the White House on this yesterday.
So Monday, you're going to have three of the lawmakers who protested
peacefully protested after the Nashville Covenant School shooting.
Have any of the victims or the victims' families been invited to the White House?
I don't have anything to read out to you about any invite.
Why?
I just don't have anything at this time to read out to you any invite. What I can say to you right now is that the president is focused on getting things done. We cannot have weapons of war in our streets. We cannot have weapons of war in our schools. And so that's why he's bringing them there. He's bringing them here to continue that conversation.
You know, Leslie, zero empathy, zero compassion, zero any of that. Just, I don't have anything for you on an invite for the victims' families, 3 of whom were 9 years old.
First of all, if we have the president invite every single victim's family with the number of mass shootings we've had that's all the president and the White House would be doing. Sadly,
Leslie, but let me
with the
stop you
numbers that we
there.
have.
I'll let you continue, but he had time to invite these people. Let's put up the video. These are the TikTok influencers. Made plenty of time for them ahead of a midterm election. They got to go, so he had time for them.
A couple of things. First of all, do I think he should reach out to, possibly visit? Again, you have a time issue. You know that in your former position. To the parents of these victims, yes. One, I've buried a child, and I can tell you, not from a shooting. I'm not going anywhere after that happened. I need to hide in my house and crawl into my hole of grief and get right with my God and to be able to move on and to move forward. So I think they need some time, a lot of time, to heal if they can ever fully heal. And President Biden knows that firsthand. He's lost 2 children himself, not from gun violence, but he knows this firsthand. I feel these are 2 very different things. These are legislators about gun control, an issue the president feels very strongly about, Democrats feel very strongly about, and an issue that as president, he has a responsibility to try and do something about, to try and protect our children in these schools, ringing doorbells, getting in the wrong car.
If he wanted to do
GOP presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy got in a heated exchange with CNN's Don Lemon on gun rights for Black Americans.
Am I the only one that noticed Vivek's a man of color? I mean, my husband's Indian.
No, of course you're not the only one.
Indian people are considered brown. Look, I'm a white person. I don't know what it's like to walk in the skin of a person of color, but I do have tons of friends from all different races and ethnic backgrounds.
And biracial children.
Yes, and I've had this conversation, and they would say, African-American, my friends that are African-American have said, we have equal rights, but we don't feel equally treated. Don't have time, that's a big conversation. But on the other side, regardless of our skin color, this is exactly what we need to do, not that. To have this conversation. It's uncomfortable, but it's long overdue, in my opinion, in this nation.
But this
and you have to be able to have this conversation, even if you don't have that experience.
Climate change is now nearly bringing members of the Biden administration to tears. I'm not kidding. Just watch as Secretary of the Interior begins to choke up and cry while talking about the president's green agenda. She's just so touched. She said it's time the crisis of our lifetime gets some attention. Watch this.
I really do have to say that all of this is because climate change is the crisis of our lifetime. We have an obligation to future generations to make sure that we have a planet for them to live on. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm working incredibly hard to make sure that we can realize that transition, that we can have differing energy sources. We can't continue to be a one industry country.
You know what I have to say, Leslie? I believe her. Like, her heart is in it. Like, I don't have a doubt about that. What's really sad is that she's being misled by things like the Inflation Reduction Act and all that money going to climate, but not talking about transition and real ways to go from don't take away my gas stove and make me drive something I don't want to drive to, well, let's use some of the resources that we have and smoothly get to and let's lead the world in getting to the next few things that become all of the answers, not just one in electricity. It's really sad because there are some ways to keep her from crying.
I like the fact that she's passionate and emotional, and I know people, you know, definitely love to pick on women when we are emotional. They say we're too emotional anyway. And I know there are people that say that you should never cry in your profession, but I would agree with you. I believe that she really, really cares about her job and really cares about climate change and really cares about this planet and what we're leaving for our kids for the future. Look, there's legislation that isn't even on the table yet that would help with regard to climate change and help make her job easier. And I'd have to disagree with you that some of these increments that give funding that way aren't helpful.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree there.
Yeah.
Just don't cry. Go ahead.